What you're looking at is a 1946 Bendix model 646A. I believe they made them in 1946 and 1947 only. And it looks like a nice little table and a couple of drawers in it with a couple of drop down leaves. When you flip the leaves up, this is what it looks like. Nice little setup here. Pure mahogany. And there's no veneer on that, I don't believe. It's solid mahogany. But when you flip one of these switches, this on-off switch, what happens is the front of it lights up and you get a dial. That was called the phantom dial. And when you turn it off, it disappears. The dial shows through the wood grain. It's an AM radio, strictly AM, and it has 6 tubes. Really neat little setup. I like it a lot. Well, as you can see, we've got some very nice tops on our radishes. They're looking really good, the whole place. Unfortunately, let's get down here for a close-up. We'll do a little close-up. Here's what's happening. See there? There's like nothing there. Just take that thing out. Look at that. Not a thing on the end. Not a thing. And it doesn't look like we're going to get anything either. So, I don't know. Either that or I'm just expecting too much too soon, but I don't think so. These things have just had to lick. They're not going to do anything. They should have puffed out a little bit by now, that's for sure. It's been almost a month. So what we're going to do, now, you know, when you have too much nitrogen in your soil, I did a lot of research on this. There's only a couple of ways you can get rid of it. One is you have to dig up the soil and replace it with something else that does not have such a high nitrogen content. Or you can plant nitrogen, eating plants like corn. If I were to plant corn in here and let it grow, it would suck the nitrogen out of the soil, which would lower the level considerably. Well, I'm not going to grow corn. I don't want to grow corn. I want to grow radishes, and I want radishes now. I don't want to have to wait until after corn grows to clean out, all the nitrogen. So we're going to go with the first option. We're going to remove. I'm going to, draw a line about right in here, right across, giving me plenty of room around this tomato plant, and we're going to remove 3/4 of the level of the compost that's in this raised bed here. We're going to put it in the old wheelbarrow. And then we're going to add sand, a mixture of sand and potting soil, and mix all that in with the existing, or what's left of the existing compost, which would be about 25% of what you see. So right now I need to pull all these radishes, remove 3/4 of it, or down about 3/4. Well, it's too late to turn back now. There they are, all piled up. Time to start digging. Boy, that's some nice, rich-looking compost, and I'm sure it is. But, that nitrogen being that high, that's just terrible. Before I put in, by the way, the next mixture, I'll test it before I put it in. I'm just kind of wondering what that nitrogen is going to do to the rest of these plants. I mean, are they going to get, like, really big and then produce no fruit? That wouldn't be cool. Hopefully that'll do it. We're down about maybe a little more than 3/4. We'll add some sand and the potting soil. Well, here come the little doggies out. They must have woke up. After another quick trip to Lowe's, I decided, after looking at all the stuff they had, I decided that this will be our new mixture, which will be, mixed in with the compost. I got a little bit of potting soil, not a whole lot, and 2 different kinds of garden soil. And I'll just go ahead and I think I'll mix up a small batch, test it, see what the nitrogen content is, and then we'll see what happens from there. I decided to forego sand. There was a fella on the internet who deals in this sort of thing. He said, a lot of nurseries mix sand with their compost. And he said, what happens in container growing? And that's essentially what I've got here. I'm growing in a container because I have that black mat underneath it. And just, walls around it. It's just a large container. He said what happens is the sand eventually, from being watered, filters down through the compost. It'll get on down there, and it does. And it'll wind up at the bottom, and you'll have a layer of sand at the bottom that the moisture cannot get through. So it prevents good drainage. And in particularly with this matting I have down here underneath the raised bed, that would be the case. So I decided no sand. Besides, some of that compost I have down there already has some sand in it that I bought at the nursery. So we'll do a little mixture, a little testing, and see if we can't come up with a mixture that has good potassium and good nitrogen and a good pH factor before I go dumping it all in there and hope for the best. Here's a quick update on that free airline radio that for those of you who watch my videos, you know it was given to me for free a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. And you know, it has a lot of loose veneer on the top. That's the first thing I'm going to have to do, is get that veneer down before I do anything. The veneer's got to be down, otherwise it'll wind up, I'll catch it on my sleeve or catch it on something and tear it off. And we don't need that problem. Down here, you know, we can get to that later. We'll get to it though. But first, the top. Anyway, it turns out to be on the back of the chassis, if you remember what was in the original video, was the number 14. And my good old mentor, Brendan, he came through on that one. He said he remembered that most of the early model airlines had a 62 in front of their number, whatever that number might be 62 dash whatever. So he said, I wonder if that's a 62-14. Sure enough, this is the model 62-14, and it's from the year 1931 or thereabouts. It says on the rider schematic prior to 1932, so we're figuring 1931. However, I mean, it's I gotta get this out of here. It's starting to sprinkle and rain again. That's all it's done in April this month. Look at these mud wasps down here. It's got a metal shield there. Look at these mud wasp nests from years ago. My gosh, I get rid of those out in the yard. And a better shot of the speaker. Well, that's looking kind of poorly, isn't it? Yes, it is. Tons of mud wasps. That thing's shot. It'll have to be, the coil and everything might be good in it, but you don't know. I'll have to check it out. But the rest of it's going to have to be rebuilt if it can. Now here's the chassis on this sucker. I'll tell you what, this is pretty bad. This is going to take a lot. So this is going to be more work than, I don't know. It's going to, even the transformer is rocking back and forth. This thing here doesn't turn anymore. There's a rubber thing down there that turns this gear, which in turn moves it back and forth on the scale. The wires are all crumbly. I tell you, it looks like a rat's intestine. And underneath, let's take a look underneath, show you what we got there. Doesn't look too promising under there. Holy mackerel. That thing has had the lick, basically. Pretty much shot. I don't know, maybe once I blow it out with the air compressor, it might not look quite so bad, but this is I don't know. I may have met my match with this one. I don't know. I gotta, under here's the tuner. If I can get it off, I don't know. Anyway, that's an update. Look at another mud wasp. Jeez. I don't know where this thing was kept, but there was a lot of mud wasps wherever it was, or dirt daubers, whatever you want to call them. That's just a quick update, just to show you what's going on. In the last Mish-Mash video, I tested the nitrogen that our radishes were growing in, and I didn't get much of a reading out of it. However, after I shut the camera off and made the video, I came back out and looked at the test tube, and son of a gun, it turned blood red. Well, blood red in the nitrogen was really, really high, as you can see right here. I said, holy mackerel. Anyway, what I've done is retested the soil. I mixed a third, and a third of what you saw, the stuff I bought at Lowe's. I mixed a third of the compost, a third of the potting soil, and a third of the garden soil together, and came up with our little solution here. And then went ahead and redid all the tests, and I think we're in much better condition now. We'll start with I followed the instructions in the booklet. It tells you how to do this. This is the nitrogen. Look at there. Now that's really good. That's a match. That's low, very low on nitrogen. All right, that's going to be good for the radishes. Now we tested the phosphorus or the potassium. Potassium is very high, all the way down here. You're just supposed to match the color. It's very high compared to that one right there. Then we'll go ahead and we'll try the phosphorus. Now the phosphorus is kind of a blue. It's very, I'd say it's about medium, between medium and high, somewhere in there right there, okay? Which is pretty good. And then the pH factor, I redid a test on the pH, and as you can see, it's between a 7 and an 8. I'm no expert when it comes to this pH stuff. Anyway, you know what I might do is I might do a little lookup here on pH, get a little smart on it, and then come back and show it to everybody in layman's terms so we can all understand it, you know. Alright, here we are. I'm going to go ahead and mix a third, a third, and a third. I'm going to take my hands and mix it all around, really take my time, get a good mixture going. I'm going to replant those radishes this morning before I go to work. The potting soil has now been mixed with the compost. Now we'll go ahead and add the garden soil and kind of top it all off and get those babies in the ground. I'll tell you what, it's no easy job mixing this stuff by hand. Kind of wears an old man out, you know. Well, that's it. All mixed. Took about 20 minutes to do it all. I mixed it as best I can. And, you know, somebody might say, well, you need to retest it for nitrogen. Oh, yeah, why? Why bother? I mean, this is, it doesn't matter if it's high, low, or in the middle. This is what we're going with, so it doesn't matter. We're going to go ahead and replant. We're going to replant the same kind of radishes I planted the first time. We're going to go with Ansel's Giant Crimson, the Giant Crimson type right here. And we're going to go with some of these white radishes, like that. And we'll go ahead and try the French breakfast, I think they're called. Yeah, French breakfast, kind of long things. Alright, let's get it done. Well, that's it, 7 rows planted. I'm going to go ahead and cover them all up. Then I'm going to give them a good watering. Water them for, you know, 2-3 days, kind of a good sprinkle until they start popping through, and then we'll see what happens. That's per the advice of one of our good subscribers. And hopefully we'll have some crunchiness going on in the not too distant future. Here's a website that tells us on YouTube about pH, and you know, I've kind of been watching it a little bit here. Let's go ahead and click it. I think the name of this thing is what is, yeah, there it is right there. What is pH? Well, let's find out. Let's see what the guy has to say here.
So the pH scale, we see the pH of pure water as 7. This is considered neutral since the hydronium and hydroxide ions are in equal concentrations. pH is measured on a logarithmic scale. Here's an image explaining how logarithms work for those of you not familiar.
Oh, I'm not familiar.
pH shows the concentration of hydronium ions in a solution as the formula of 10 to the power of the negative pH.
Okay, that's enough of that. Let's take a look at this this pH stuff in terms that you and I can understand it, okay? The pH scale. The pH stands for, I believe it's power of hydrogen or something like that. Power of hydrogen, because it involves hydrogen atoms and a bunch of stuff that we don't care about. Generally speaking, you know, the average guy. The scale runs from 0 up to 14. If I can keep this stuff still. It runs from 0 to 14. Okay? In the middle, right here, is 7. Anything above that, you're running into the sweet zone. Okay? Or I think the actual term for it is basic, maybe. I don't know. Sweet. Down here, 7 and below, you begin to run into the acidic zone. And it's good to kind of keep your pH factor right here around 7. Now I've seen some websites that other people have told me that, you know, 6 to 7 is good. I've seen other websites that said 6.2 to 7 is good. Well, you know, for our purposes, I'm not going to treat this like absolute rocket science. If I can get between a 6 and about a 7.5, I'm going to consider that good, okay? So the question arises is, well, what do all plants, should all plants be within that range right there? Well, no. Some plants like a little more acidic. Some plants like a lot more sweet, okay? Well, where do you find that out? You know, what do tomatoes require? What potatoes and radishes and cucumbers? You know, what would be the ideal pH factor for those items? Well, you know, it's easy, and I'm going to show you how. Let's make this thing a little simpler, you know, to where I can understand it. There is a website out there. It's called Mike the Gardener Enterprises, and he lists all the various vegetables all the way down. You can print it out and stick it on the wall or stick it out over your garden or whatever, with all kinds of vegetables, and over to the right is the ideal pH factor for that vegetable. That's all we need, you know. What do we have to do all that logarithmic stuff? Forget all that. Let's look at radishes. Okay, for radishes, 6 to 7. Just what I said. Cool, huh? Well, let me see. What are tomatoes? Let's find out what tomatoes are. I'm kind of curious about that. Tomatoes is 5.5. Oh, you got a bigger range there. Right there, 5.5 to 7.5. Well, that's pretty good. Let's see something that requires a little more acidic. Let me see here, 5.5. Here's a catnip. Oh, you want to grow some catnip? Let me see. I guess that's about it. Pretty much between 6 and 7 for just about everything, okay? There's another website out there called ehow.com. And if you type in how much nitrogen can I put on my vegetable garden, you just type that in, up will pop ehow.com. And it gives you just a quick rundown of high, medium, and low, okay? Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the high nitrogen requirements would be, let's zoom in here a little bit more, would be beets, you know, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, etc., 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 spinach, potatoes. Well, I'm glad to hear it's potatoes because we got a lot of high nitrogen in that compost I'm using. That's always nice. Spinach, which I'm growing, which is always nice. Let's go down to the medium. Vegetables that have a medium or balanced nitrogen requirement are chicory, asparagus, onions. Well, I'm growing onions and they're not doing so well right now. I may have to change some of the dirt out in that onion. Also the eggplant. The eggplant seems to be doing okay though. Tomatoes require about a medium. Now let's go down to low nitrogen requirement. Cucumbers. No, that's not good. See, there again, there's a low requirement. And I've got high nitrogen in those boxes. This has been one heck of an education all the way around this time. You know, it's just like fixing radios, old vintage radios. You start out basically knowing nothing, but as the time goes by, you learn. After a while, you start to get pretty good at it. So that's for the stage I'm at right now. I'm still learning. You know, and it requires a lot of research, which is what I'm doing. Well, there you go. Low nitrogen requirement, radishes, right there. I also found out that radishes are very healthy in they contain a lot of potassium that the body needs, but they also require a lot of potassium in the soil when you grow it. I guess that's where they get the potassium from, the soil. You know, I've figured out finally in my little brain, everything is in the soil. It's all in the soil. Parsnips, turnips, rutabagas all require low nitrogen. So ehow.com is another thing you can print out that'll kind of help you with your nitrogen growing needs, okay? Well, guess what? Last weekend I was flea marketing, and just up the road I was just kind of looking around to see what I could find, and in this one flea market there sat a 646A. I couldn't believe it. I said, holy mackerel, look at this thing, you know. I had seen one years ago, but I never saw one. I mean, I saw it, you know, on the internet, but I never saw one in the flesh. It's got some problems, you know. There's a lot of scratches on there. I'll have to refinish the top, which is not a problem. I can do that. And it is missing one knob. And it's missing the dial scale, as you can see, and the wood veneer or wood covering that went over the dial. However, part of that problem has already been solved because I found out that Radio Days makes a reproduction dial for this radio, and here it is right here. Check that out. Check that out. That'll be the dial for the radio. Okay. Now there were two different dials. One started with 54 and the other one started with 55, I believe, and I think the upper end there was 5 kilocycles difference also, or something like that. But anyway, this will go behind the glass and shine through, And all I have to do now is come up with some kind of a wood type of, you know, deal to cover the front of the glass, so when you turn on the radio, it shines through. So where do we do, you know, what do we do about that? How do I do that? Well, I have an idea. One of the things I like about this this little table is there were two kinds, when you flip the leaves up, there were two different kinds of supports once the leaf came up. Some were metal, and some were just wooden dog ears that flipped out. This is one of the, I think the 1946 model had the wooden dog ear. This one has the dog ears. So what happens is when you flip up the table, if you can watch down in there, if I can see it. See how it flips out? Is that cool? It's a spring-loaded dog ear on both sides. I think that's really neat. And I'm glad they're there, and I'm glad they're still functional. Around the back side, everything is intact back here, to include the speaker cover. Speaker cover. So we're going to leave that speaker cover probably exactly the way it is. But other than a few scratches and missing dials, and you know, of course someone has been in it and messed around, and I'll have to take a look at it. It'll be a future project. Probably, this will probably be one of my winter projects because it's small and easy. It's got a great sound. If you go to Google and type in Bendix 646A, there's a guy there that has a video. You know, it sounds great, and there's a little bit of rub off right here of the wood. I think I might be able to touch that up with a little paint. Anyway, I just thought I'd like, you'd like to see it. There it is. That one of our future projects. Again, I'm not going to be restoring it step by step, but you know, you now have seen the before, and you'll get a chance to see the later. Now that the radishes are replanted, I've been letting these things sit in the house like this, and let's see if there's been any significant color change. Now the pH has gotten a little lighter, which is good. That's very good. Okay, not as dark as it was. And the nitrogen still sitting at a light pink color, which is great. Low nitrogen. The phosphorus, let me see, potassium. I think this is potassium. The potassium is looking good. Light, just a light gray. And the phosphorus, a light blue. I think that all means good. Well, we're going to find out. This little test kit I bought seems to be pretty darn accurate. Well, that's it for now. We'll go ahead and wrap this video up here. It's raining again, and I need to get the camera out of the rain and everything else. The reason I'm working so hard on this hoop house and trying to get everything growing is because in Arkansas here we're fast running out of cool weather. Pretty soon, the hot scalding weather is going to slam down on us. And I won't have a chance to grow any more lettuce or any radishes and things of that nature. The weather will be just too hot. So I have to get it done as quickly as I can and keep working at it until I do. And next video, for those of you who watch my videos, the next video will be the Halo Light, the Savannah Halo Light television that we're working on. The cabinet is now done completely. So hopefully next time we'll be able to get the chassis and the CRT back in. That'll be our next video. Until next time, I appreciate you all being here. This is John.